How does a player who got paid $125 million just 2 years ago get traded for Rudy Gay and a second round pick? Let's take a deep dive on why John Collins was traded for so less. When a team is thinking about acquiring a player through free agency or through a trade, they need to think about, does this player fit on our team as a player? And does his contract fit in our cap situation? If the answer to one of those questions is no, that player does not fit, then you don't have to consider that player anymore. But if the answer is yes to both of those questions, then you have to look at the player's injury history and character. So let's start off by looking at John Collins, the player. Collins likes to shoot in the corners, at the top of the three, and in the paint. He's most efficient from three in the corners, especially the left corner. In fact, he's in the 80th percentile for bigs shooting from the corner three according to Cleaning the Glass. However, he's in the 22nd percentile among bigs shooting from the corner three percentage-wise. This past year, he only shot 29% from three in the corners. But 3 to 4 years ago, Collins was in the 84th or 86th percentile among bigs shooting threes. And we'll get to why I think this drastic change has happened. But one thing I want to point out is that I think his form is good, but not great. You can see here that his guide hand isn't really guiding the ball, it just comes off the ball. I think his guide hand needs to be straighter. I don't think he's pushing off with the thumb on his guide hand, and overall his form isn't that bad, so I'm nitpicking a little bit here. He has the potential to face up a little bit more and take these types of shots. He's not an off the dribble type of shooter, he's really just best as a spot up shooter. This past season, John Collins scored about 1.24 points per possession in the pick and roll. In other words, he's really good as a roll man. He can finish in multiple ways when rolling to the basket. Obviously, he can finish with a dunk, he's really athletic, but he can also just finish with a short floater. He just has really nice touch around the basket. I bet Trae Young is really going to miss throwing alley-oops to John. His go-to shot in the post is this right hook shot. It's pretty consistent and effective, but it's also pretty predictable. I would like to see him add this turnaround jumper in his game. He just doesn't have a lot of post moves at his disposal yet, so I just think it would be a good addition to his game. Even though he misses the floater, I think this is a really nice spin move by Collins. I would like to see him try more moves like that. Collins really excels at driving when he has a full head of steam or when he's driving against smaller players. It seems to me that overall he's not the best driver. He doesn't have a great first step, and he also tends to struggle against players his own size. If there's an open driving lane, he could take it. He's just not going to wow you one-on-one and make a great drive to the basket. I noticed that he tends to struggle at the basket against players who are taller than him or around the same size. In terms of finishing at the basket, Cleaning the Glass has him ranked in the 79th percentile among all bigs. So I'm not saying he's bad by any means, it's just something I noticed. Cleaning the Glass also has him ranked in the 51st percentile for offensive rebounds. That's pretty average. He used to be in the top 80 percentile, so I'm not sure exactly what happened. If anyone knows, then please drop a comment down below. Okay, now let's talk about his defense. Overall, he's a solid post defender. He tries really hard and he maintains his ground. I wouldn't say that he's elite in guarding the post, but he is pretty solid. His effort on this end is just really good. It shows up when he's closing out and on his on-ball defense. He moves his feet pretty well for his size, and he's really good guarding players his size when it comes to on-ball defense. That being said, I wouldn't say that he's elite in this category either. Some players are just able to get to their spot against him and score. Just like most players his size, he struggles guarding off flare screens and also defending off of screens. In my opinion, the most important type of defense when discussing a big man in today's game is how they fare in the pick and roll. In all his years playing, Synergy has him ranked average to below average when guarding in ball screen action, and I would say that the film backs that up. When watching his film this past year, I would say that he struggled when he was in drop coverage. But Atlanta also had him switch in ball screen action. And there were 1 or 2 possessions where I was impressed in how he did. But overall, offensive players took advantage of him switching. They were able to score on him more often than not. Like I mentioned before, I think he moves well for his size. But that being said, I don't think he's a switchable type of player. He just doesn't move his feet well enough to switch, and that's okay. A lot of players his size are also unable to do that. As I started to make this video, I started to think, is he more of a 4 or a 5? And then it became clear to me watching these next few clips. If you're an offensive team, you could attack the 4 or the 5 in ball screen action when the Hawks were constructed this way. The Hawks starting lineup was not a bad defensive team last year, but the Hawks struggled with any other lineup with John Collins and Capella on the floor. Just like it's really hard to play two non-shooters on the offensive end of the floor, I think it's really hard to play two bad pick and roll defenders at the same time. So that's why I think John is going to be best suited playing the 5. He's also exceptionally good at stripping the ball. He has really quick hands. For his career, he's averaged about 1 block per game. He's not going to wow you and be an elite rim protector, but he's solid in that department. Now that we've looked at John Collins the player, let's look at John Collins' value with his contract. If John Collins was getting $10 million a year, every team in the league would be interested in getting him. But because he's getting $25 million this coming year and $26.5 after that, the amount of buyers are a lot less. His third year has a player option. It's hard to say if he's going to take that yet. A lot depends on how he performs these next 2 years. Atlanta's ownership group has never paid the luxury tax. And after this year, they have to figure out how they're going to pay DeJounte Murray, Onyeka Okongwu, Bogdan Bogdanovic, and Saddiq Bey. So obviously Collins has turned into a luxury that they cannot afford. The Hawks, like many other teams, don't want to hit the second apron. So yes, Atlanta did get worse talent-wise, but I don't know if Collins is the best fit for their team anyways long-term. Although it's a small sample size, I think playing Saddiq Bey or AJ Griffin at the 3 and DeAndre Hunter at the 4 is probably best for their offense and arguably better for their defense as well. I also wonder what would have happened if the Hawks waited until after the dust has settled with free agency, because there are always some teams who didn't get the free agents they wanted and then have cap space to take on a contract like John Collins. But in the end, Utah made a lot of sense. They have plenty of cap space, Utah is not a big free agent destination, and I think he's a really good fit next to Lauri Markkanen. Playing next to Lauri and Taylor Hendricks is going to hide a lot of the weaknesses of John Collins. I think it's an excellent fit for both sides, and I think he's going to succeed in Utah. Okay, remember when I said that you have to look at the player and then his contract and then anything else after that? Well, in Collins' case, we have to look at his injured finger. I think it was March of 2022 when he suffered this injury. It's called a boutonniere deformity. It's a tendon injury in the finger, and he suffered it on his ring finger. I'm not a doctor, so anyone out there, please feel free to correct me, but from my understanding, this finger stays flexed a little bit. You can notice it on some of these dunks, and sometimes he wears a strap over it. I feel like this is a big factor in terms of why he shot so poorly this year compared to years prior. So like I mentioned before, he used to shoot about 40% from 3, and this past season he only shot 29% from 3. However, there is a silver lining. He shot 38% from 3 after the All-Star break. Before the All-Star break, he shot 25% from 3. So maybe his finger is healing. Either way, I think Utah made a smart move and they bought low on him. So that's all I have to say about this move. Thanks for watching. Peace.